Hi, this is Yolanda from Alnico Club, and we're here today with Laura, a rising star from Eastern Margins in the underground club scene in the UK, and Lumi, the co-founder of the label Eastern Margins, focusing on representing East and Southeast Asian music. Welcome, how are you doing?
Good, so happy to be here. Thank you very much for having us.
Yeah, no, thank you for having us. I'm super gassed to be here.
Thank you. Very excited to see you here. Well, Laura, first of all, congratulations on the release of your EP, Soft Like Steel. The title is a combination of two very contrary concepts. Can you elaborate on that like a little bit and how it ties into the whole EP?
So I think there's a few things. I mean, choosing an EP name is never easy, but I think the contradiction at least came from this idea of trying to look at something which you might have a preconception about, whether or not that be, you know, an idea or a texture or just, I feel like I see a lot of feelings in like even just objects. So I was thinking about like steel as a like texture. It's so like hard, you can associate it with like really sharp things, but then also on the surface it's very soft and it's very beautiful and it's very elegant. And I think like the general concept of the EP is to try and just look deeper into things and see how you feel truly like within yourself about them, because I felt like for a bit of my life I maybe had some preconceptions about what I wanted to do with my life and what I thought of certain ideas. And I think it's just about opening your mind. So exploring like contradictions and being okay with them, I think that's kind of roughly where it came from. But yeah.
I love that. Thank you. And on this EP, you not only wrote all of your songs, you also produced them. So could you say like, what's the most fun song to produce in? And could you give us a little insight in your production process?
Most fun song to produce, I would say, was probably Rising, which is actually the final song on the EP. And that was because I think, you know, I came from a songwriting background. So my process is usually to start with like lyrics and a feeling. But this song, I specifically wrote after I decided that I wanted to shoot a short film for this EP. And so it has a very cinematic tone to it because I really wanted it to be an end track to a film. And so I had a lot of fun actually thinking more about how could this create an atmosphere for like a finale of a film. And that was a different way of writing than I usually do. And I think like you make fun for yourself as a producer by just like trying new things. So it was, yeah, that was probably my favorite one to do.
I love it. Thank you. And it perfectly ties into the next question, which is about the film. I love the film that, you know, it's the same title of the EP and there's like 3 parts of it. And like you basically said it how you wanted to create it alongside with the project. But like in the storytelling of this film, you were basically like a narrator and talking about like this journey of the protagonist, what they're going through, and like how does that character ties into your experience and maybe reflect on your past or something?
So I think I very intentionally told Oscar, the director, that I didn't want to be like, because before I had been kind of the main person in a lot of my music videos, but I very much wanted this story to be quite like surrealist and out of, let's say, reality, because I think the journey and the battle that the main character goes through and what they eventually become is almost like an ideal scenario. It's not a reflection of reality, and it was kind of reflective of the fact that like this project for me is about trying to explore what I could be and what things that I can achieve when I don't limit myself by necessarily like the reality of society and all those pressures. So like being able to do everything in a surrealist way was just, it allowed me to just feel more free with the art I was making. So I feel like maybe she represents like a very amazing, strong, powerful version of me that I wish I could be every day, but it's like still a bit of a struggle to get there, you know.
No, that makes perfect sense. And I thought it's going to be like the backstory of something, but actually it's like, you know, like looking into the future, what you want to be in the future. Also, I noticed that your artistic like representation does not only come from music, you also like you're a very like visual heavy person, and I love all the shoots, the covers, especially the film. Like how do you feel like fashion or like, you know, visuals ties into your artistic persona?
I think the way of putting it is probably like, I love the idea of like immersive world building, and that would pretty much encapsulate any type of art. I just like, I love collaborating with other artists. I love getting them to interpret what I do. And so really I'm kind of open to like every kind of visual medium. I obviously chose music because I think that's probably the one that I had the best like way of expressing myself. But I used this project really as an opportunity to also like touch other mediums, and like I would like to continue doing that because I think it's just, if you can create a full body experience, which live for me is kind of like 4D. If video is 3D, then live is 4D, right? I'm all just about like wanting to create that feeling, just to take you out of like where you are in like your reality, and just like make you feel a little bit like anything is possible, you know?
I love that. Thank you. And since you're on tour, what's like your favorite song to play live?
My favorite song to play live. So In Your Blood is probably like the most cathartic song to play live because it's just the same lyric over and over again, but like I just scream it even louder. And like that song really to me represents like what clubbing is about. It's just like letting go of like any like ties that you have to the real world and just being your true self. Like I think these are safe spaces that we can just like do our thing. And so that's just like, it's just like the feeling of like ripping off some like layer. So I really enjoy playing that.
Great. I really look forward to seeing that song tonight then. All right, this question is for both of you. So since you're on tour, you already had like 3 stops already, right, in China. And how do you think performing in China differs from the West, the UK, or the rest of the world?
I can take this one. I think it's super interesting. I think I've performed in China on 2 tours now. This is my 3rd one. And the thing that always resonates with me is how open-minded the crowds and audiences are in China. What I find really interesting is that club culture in China is quite ahistorical. There is no massive history or lineage of electronic music in club culture here. So what that means is a lot of the audiences that attend our shows, they're very open-minded, and it's more of a blank canvas. So I find people are more patient sometimes, and sometimes the opposite, much more impatient as well. But I really like that. I like the idea that there's less preconception and there's less expectation around what you can play. So I found it really good. What do you think, Laura?
I completely agree. I also think there's more space to carve out something that's like meaningful and impactful when there is less kind of structure and like institutions around like the clubbing culture here as well. And I think people are just a lot more open-minded, and like I love feeling like I'm part of something that's really new and exciting. And you know, I definitely feel like China is the place for that. So yeah,
That's perfect. Thank you. And Lumi, as the co-founder of Eastern Margins, how did you come up with the idea of Eastern Margins? What's the ideology behind of it?
Yeah, of course. So Eastern Margins was born from a very basic desire for representation, to see our culture and faces like us represented in spaces, in clubland and in electronic music that me and Anthony, my co-founder, never really seen before. Over time, though, Eastern Margins has evolved, I think, beyond just that desire for representation into more a community for storytelling, to tell narratives and to tell stories from East and Southeast Asia, and especially from the margins, the idea of the alternative margins of East and Southeast Asia. So that's kind of where the name comes from, the idea that the real innovation and experimentation and forward-thinking parts of culture happen in the boundaries between different cultures, places, and space. So that's kind of what Eastern Margins is about and the genesis of the name.
Thank you. You're basically like curating the sounds from the margins, from the smaller places that's less visual to like the main audiences. So you're also a DJ. How do you curate your music and your selection of music when you're doing a set?
I think the attitude I have to create in my music and my sets is almost like the naivety of a fan. I don't think it's too deep. If something makes you laugh, something makes you feel, something gives you an emotional reaction, that is in and of itself a reason for it to be heard by other people. And I think that's what I really try and capture with the way that I DJ. It's the idea of this like naivety, the idea of like, this sounds really interesting, I want to know more about it and I want to share it with people. That's at the core of what my DJ sets and my kind of curation technique is about.
Thank you. That's amazing. And for the label, it's an independent label, and you're mainly promoting East Asian, Southeast Asian music, which is very much underrepresented in the UK mainstream. What was like the most challenging thing to establish the label and keep it going in that sense?
I think there's two main challenges. One is financial and another is cultural. I think on the financial front, it's harder than ever for independent artists, labels, whole scenes to generate meaningful and sustainable income to keep going. So that's something you really just have to hustle for and to find like that niche. And on a cultural level, I think the main challenge that we've had is trying to carve our own path that is separate but respectful of some of the wider global representations of East and Southeast Asian culture. Things like K-pop and J-pop. These are very, very dominating cultural trends, not only in the UK, but I'd probably say worldwide. But the whole idea behind Eastern Margins is to shine a light and showcase culture from the margins. So we want to establish that space without falling into kind of the slipstream of these wider cultural movements.
Thank you. And for us, as a club that's newly founded in northern China, we don't really have a club scene here, and the audience is very niche. And we're trying to, attract audiences as well. And I feel like club culture as a rather foreign culture for China. Do you have any advice of promoting club culture in northern China on a rather barren ground?
Yeah. It's really interesting because I think, while I probably agree that club culture is maybe relatively new in like Qingdao and like Shandong, I would say the idea of rave culture, the idea of communion is still something that exists in China, but perhaps not in the way that is typically seen in the West. I think like when you go into like a restaurant back room and there's like 20 people and the room is smoke filled and there's like 30 bottles and everyone's playing, shouting. That's the same energy as what I would think of as like a rave. It's people getting together, communing over like shared interests and often music. And when people sing, in those rooms, it's that same energy. And I think trying to create club culture in China and more specifically in Qingdao, what I always thought would be really cool be trying to like drive influence from that, be inspired by that culture we already have here, rather than necessarily always looking to what exists in the West and what is kind of represented in English language world as like club culture. So in a way, I guess to summarize, it's like our club culture should look to the culture that we already have in China.
I love that. So building it up from the ground and absorbing what we already have and build on that, and not to like look into anything in the West or in the other places that it has been already established.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for chatting with us, and we really look forward to seeing you play tonight. Thank you.
So much, Yolanda. Thank you so much for having us. Bye.